Hola, 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 hola. Buenos días, buenas tardes, buenas noches. Desde donde nos estéis viendo, cuando nos estéis viendo. Ya veo por ahí a Philippe Rahm. Hi, Philippe. Just we are going to wait just 5 or 3 5 minutes for everybody to join. Just give me these minutes before we start. Bienvenidos, Luis P09, Meda Arquitectos, veo a Lola Bataller, veo a... ¿Quién más? ¿Quién más? A Ape, Ferrón o Ferrón. Bueno, en fin, muchísimas gracias a todos, como siempre, por entrar, por estar un miércoles más en el Club de Lectura. Esta sesión va a ser en inglés. This session will be in English. Philip, don't worry. I'm going to start speaking in English right now. I'm just introducing this session. Antes de empezar a hablar en inglés y darle paso a nuestro queridísimo invitado de hoy, quiero darle las gracias, por supuesto, a nuestros invitados de la semana pasada, a Carlos Irisarri y a Eduard Sancho Pou, que estuvieron con nosotros hablando sobre el libro Arquitectura e Intangibles. Gracias a ambos. Ya sabéis que todas las sesiones de nuestro club se quedan colgadas en el Instagram, en nuestro canal, perdón, no en el Instagram ahí en general, no, en nuestro canal de Instagram TV. Ahí están todos, los podéis disfrutar cuando queráis, como queráis. Yo sé que hay veces que no llegáis a la hora del directo, no pasa nada, ahí están siempre esperándoos para vosotros y para vosotras, para que los disfrutéis cuando queráis. Lo dicho, Carlos, Eduard, muchísimas gracias por venir y por compartir ese ratito con nosotros. Yo creo que hoy ya voy a empezar a hablar en inglés para ya sentar las bases de lo que va a ser la sesión de hoy. Así que, voy a empezar ya. Today we are talking about a new book, Meteorología de los Sentimientos, by Philippe Rahm. We are going to be with him in just a minute, and we are going to enjoy talking about feelings, about what else? About meteorology, of course, about sustainability, about a lot of things that I want to share with him, and of course the comment section down below. It's open for you all to ask him whatever you want. I'm going to translate if you need me to translate the questions for him, and to ask him whatever you are curious about his work, about his book, about everything that we are going to talk about today. So please send your comments down below. I'll be watching. And Philippe, I think we are ready to start right now. And yes, maybe we shall start right now for us to have the most of the time. I'm going to send you the invitation and we'll start. There you are. And please, everybody who's watching right now, please just send a message confirming that everyone... Hi, Philippe, how
Hello.
are you?
Good. It changed.
Good afternoon. How
Hello.
are you?
Good, and you?
Very, very well. Very excited for today, for this session. Thank you for being here. It's really a pleasure to have you here today and to talk about this new book, Meteorología de los Sentimientos. Maybe I'm going to mess everything up with the languages and everything, because of course the title right now is in Spanish. We are talking in English and you speak French, so it's going to be a little bit of margin of mistakes. Thank you very much again for being here today. Is everything fine? Everything it's okay?
Yes, it's
hear
fine.
me?
It's fine. Yes, everything is fine. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, that's perfect. So, as I told you yesterday in our trial, I'm going to introduce you. I know there's no need for an introduction for you because everybody here knows who you are and your work and everything. But in case any person is, like a little bit of, we don't know how and where we are, I'm going to introduce you and then we'll start with the book.
Okay,
It's fine for you?
it's fine. Yes, thank you.
Perfect, perfect. So today we are with Philippe Rahm. He is a Swiss architect, principal in the office of Philippe Rahm Architects based in Paris. His work extends the field of architecture from the psychological to the meteorological, has received a lot of international audience and also prizes. Um, he has taught architecture design at the GSD Harvard University. He has also represented Switzerland at the 8th Architectural Biennale in Venice, and also was one of the 25 manifestos architects of Aaron Bedstick in 2008. Architectural Venice Biennale. He also has participated in a number of exhibitions worldwide. Philippe, your work is, has no boundaries right now in the world, and he has, his work exhibiting, for example, I don't know, Centre Pompidou in Paris, Guggenheim Museum in New York, MoMA. Well, a lot of places worldwide, of course. In 2018, he is the editor of the meteorology column of the international architecture magazine Domus. And in 2020, he is the curator of the monumental exhibition Histoire naturelle de l'architecture. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it okay or not. I'm so sorry if I'm messing it up. Thank you.
It's fine.
In the pavilion of the L'Arsenal de Paris. No? So thank you so much for being here today, Philippe. And we have the honor to have in our catalog this book, Meteorología de los Sentimientos, which has been previously published in French in Le Petit Matin. I don't want to to miss that data. So let's talk about it. What do we have in our hands? What do I have in my hands with this book?
So thank you for the invitation, and thank you for the translation of the book and the publishing of this book. It's really nice. And so this book is a kind of very personal book, because it was a publisher in France, Jérôme Moche, that he knew that I was writing, and one moment we have a conversation, and he proposed to me to do a book of literature. So it was not a theoretical architectural book. It was not something monographic book. So it was something like for like poetry or like literature. And so for me, it was quite a strange demand, but I was at one moment it became something that was interesting for me, and so it's a book that it's a autobiographical book, and it's at the beginning it was more about children memories, and in this type of memories. I have introduced the same way that I'm doing my architectural project. So it, to not talk about the reality like something like we know, but to decompose the reality into different parameters, like and to introduce the atmosphere, the weather, the climate as part of the action of the narrative. And maybe later I will talk about that, because it's become something like we talk about climatesis, but I will just talk about that later. And so it's a very short novel, short stories, and like 2 pages, inside 2 pages. The chapter are like independent memories of 2-3 pages. And so the weather is really present inside this book, and it's show that we are not. It's not only human activities. It's not only we are not alone. There is also the weather. There is also some other parameters that are working with us, and so finally it became this book, and I get very, the people that are reading this book, they love it very much, and they say that they understand better my work, by reading that, because so it's for some people it was like introducing into what I'm, into my brain, and to understand a little how I can understand the things, and so and I have to say that it's very personal too. I'm talking about my some personal stories. It's nothing. There is no tragedy. It's not. It's a small stories, but maybe it's also funny stories. So it's a kind of mix of um, of different type of narrative. Yes.
Mm. It's a very curious book because it's written in first person. I mean,
Yes.
you are always talking with your voice. I mean, you're not referring in a third person way. So it's really curious to see how precisely you describe all the feelings and all the atmospheres that embraces you in all that kind of stories. What is so important to you, to be so so conscious about your body in this book?
Maybe when I was student in Lausanne in Switzerland, at that time it was the tendenza, the Italian tendenza, that was very popular, and so I grew with Aldo Rossi, and I was a super fan, and super. I know everything about Aldo Rossi. I also traveled to Italy to visit, some all the building, I can visit when I was there.
Yes.
And of course the two important book of Aldo Rossi was the architecture of the city, and so it was more like an historical theoretical book, and maybe it's maybe I'm mimicking a little Aldo Rossi by doing my.
You're inspired.
Yes.
You're inspired by him.
Inspired by, because he did a kind of historical theoretical book, and maybe you was talking about the Histoire naturelle de l'architecture. Maybe it's my history, my architecture of the city, book. It's more like an historical, and trying to explain how today we can understand the history linked to sustainability, global warming, and pandemic. So at the time of Aldo Rossi, this type of concern was no more really there. So he was only talking about symbolism, analogy, culture. So it was very superstructural. It was only about human things, human affair, and but today we have to reintroduce, the infrastructure. We have to reintroduce the health, the disease, the problem of energy, the problem of climate, and so the infrastructure is becoming important again. We forget during the second part of the 20th century, we forget all the infrastructure, because oil and coal and antibiotic and vaccine, give a very strong power to humanity, and so we forget that we were part of kind of infrastructure. So Aldo Rossi, is very superstructural, and me, I'm very infrastructural. So it's a first difference, if we want, between the architecture of the city and natural history of architecture. And then there is a second book of Aldo Rossi, a very good book, and I like it. I never read it again since when I was student, but it was the scientific autobiography. It's in French. It was autobiographie scientifique, and it's also a kind of personal memories about, he was explaining, for example, he have an accident, and he get to the hospital, and he feels the bones of his body, and so the cemeteries of in Italy was like bones, So, and there is this type of analogy and memories, and so it was like also very superstructural because it was quite psychoanalytic. Maybe there is a kind of this kind of psychology that was dominant. That was, and so maybe this book is my my scientific autobiography. So I'm just inventing what I never thought about that before today. So but maybe
No, that's
yes.
that's true. We got really interested in this book when we talked about that, because it's so rare for an architect to speak for those personal experiences.
Yes.
So specifically related to the body, to the atmosphere that is surrounded by, to the, I don't know, everything that has to do with the skin, with the we are going to talk about all this a little bit later, but I want to explain to the viewers right now how is the book structured, because there is not just one text in here. We have three texts indeed in the book. So what is the difference between these three texts?
Just to finish what I was saying before about Aldo Rossi, it was just the scientific autobiography. So for me, it's a kind of not scientific autobiography, but more like a climatic autobiography. It's like it's this kind of. And then there is a three part in the book. Because the book in French was sold out, the first edition, so Les Petits Matins, they proposed to republish it and to do it again, and so they proposed to me to add some new short stories, and also we have an introduction by Dominique Thomas. Dominique Thomas is he's the dean for the chair of at UCLA of French studies. He's very famous in France because he's one of the post-colonial defender, since 20 years. And but today is also interesting into the climatic, we can say, climatic studies or climate studies. And so he write an introduction called Climatisme. In Spain, it's climatismo.
Climaticismo.
Okay. Yes. So and so I like very much this introduction because it's he try also and we are trying also to invent a kind of new type of writing with this climatism, and so I can talk about that a little more now if you want.
Yes, of course, of course. Yeah, I would love it.
Okay. So the idea of the climatism is first to say that since maybe there is a new book from Indian American writer, and he was published a few years ago, and Amitav Ghosh, it's a very famous, very popular writer, American writer. And so he's talking. He say it's strange because in the contemporary literature there is the global warming is not there. Nobody is talking about climate change, and so he writes the book like 4 years ago. So now it changed, but 4 years ago, it was like absent of the literature, and the literature was only about psychology, only about humanity, and the humanity was completely free, like without climate, without more like a psychological analysis of the people, and so what we wanted to say with the climatism is to to be less anthropocentric, to say, okay, we are not only human, you know, in our life. We are
We are not alone. We
we
are
are
not
not
alone.
alone, exactly. And
Yeah.
so this is something that you know, we know, for example, that 70% of the cells that compose a human body are not non-human, you know. So there is more non-human cell on the human body than human cell. So so it means and we know that also in the brain there is also some emotional connections that are involving non-human microbe or things like that. So it's quite strange to think that you know, our life, our stories are not completely free, you know, from the materiality of the other type of life, but also some other type of material. And so, by introducing the climate into in my short stories, the idea is also to say that we are not alone. That the climate is also part of the story and is also an actor. You know, like I'm an actor, but there is also maybe the rain, maybe there is the heat. There is also the coldness, or there is the food that are transforming the action, transforming the narrative, and are part of the narrative. And so I have to say that in a lot, the majority of my stories, you know, it's the human narrative is disturbed by something that comes from outside, and. And this idea in our climatism theory with Dominique Thomas, and there is also Jean-Max Collard. So we are three in this climaticist group. We are also now we would like to introduce a French writer, Marie Dariussec, into this climaticist group because we did 1 month ago in Lyon, in Villa Gilet, we did a symposium about that. And so the idea of the climaticist is to say that our hero is Albert Camus, and with a stranger, because it's a very you know, it's very popular book, but if you read it again today, it's strange, because you understand that in reality the main actor, the main character of the story is the sun. You know, this is the sun that is deciding what's happened. You know, this is for example, at the beginning of The Stranger of Albert Camus, the guy have no emotion, and you know, everybody are saying, but it's strange because his mother is dead, and he has no emotion. But in reality, he has some emotion, but it's more linked to the heat, because he's overeating. You know, he's in a room very hot, and then he go outside and it's too hot. There is too much sun, and so he's complaining about the heat. And so the presence of the sun is disturbing his normal human emotion. Normally, he should be sad because his mother is dead, but he is disturbed by the presence of the sun. And also, the murder is linked to the heat, because he is looking for water to drink, and so he's blind by the knife of the Arab, and so he become crazy with that, and so we can say that, you know, in this climaticist theory, we can say that, you know, the climate can also be an actor of a character of the stories, and maybe there is a link also in my work in architecture to say, for example, the climate, the rain is also the designer of the house, or the cold is a designer of the house, or the gravity. You know, why the walls are vertical is not because because as an architect, I decide to do a vertical wall. It's because the gravity is vertical. So the gravity is more the designer of the form of the wall than me. Or, you know, so there is a lot of decisions like that are not you know, this is what I'm explaining in the book Natural History of Architecture. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's to say that we are not the only designer of the building. You know, there is a lot
Yes.
of other designer, and so in this book, so this is a little the idea that okay, I'm there. There is some other people, but there is also the night. There is also the coolness, the heat, and that are
Mm-hmm.
part of the story.
Yeah, that's so interesting because one of the things that we can or that I can get from this book is some kind of self-consciousness that goes into maybe some kind of meditation. I mean that you are so present in that moment, feeling all the sun, the earth, but not just the nature, even the temperature, even the kind of a humidity that the I don't know the grass is giving to your back. Well, I remember this passage when you describe when you are lay down on a grass on the grass and all the and you tell how all the elements that are between your skin and the grass start losing this kind of isolation
Mm.
capacity because the water just it enters into that. No, so that kind of things makes you feel really present in that book, really
Yeah,
conscious about your book. So
yeah.
while you're reading, maybe you can do this exercise yourself.
Mm.
Maybe it's kind of that what you are trying to do. Also, is
Yeah.
it?
Yes, it's also linked to I think to a new type of knowledge. For example, I was, you know, today with internet, you know, you can get all the
Yeah.
information. You know, you understand. You can understand what it is radiation. You can understand the convection.
Mm-hmm.
You can understand the conduction. You can understand the evaporation. You can understand the albedo, the emissivity, the effusivity. So you can understand, you know, in 5 minutes, you just Google it, and so you have some information about that.
Yes.
And so it changed completely in reality if you compare to the previous generation of me, you know, of my when I was student, you know, it was complicated to get some information. You have to go to the library and to find a book that has you know you have to take time and to find a good book to get some information. And so you know if you think about the postmodern generation, you know they were talking about cinema and comics books. You know they were fascinating with type of popular knowledge. And but
Mm-hmm.
you can understand that also because it was linked to the possibility of access to the information. It was complicated for them to get some information. So it was easy to get information from when you go to see a movie or you go to the movie theater and you get some information, so you can mimic these kind of you know of things coming from the cinema in the architectural project. But it was
Mm-hmm.
more complicated to get technical information, or and so maybe in the writing it was a little the same. You know, um, if you think 20 years ago or 30 years ago, you can say, okay, it's hot, it's you know you can
Mm-hmm.
write it's hot, but today maybe you can say okay the radiation is you know it's no more it's less filtered by
It's
the
high or
atmosphere,
whatever. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and so the albedo is quite high, so you receive some double quantity of radiation, and by conduction you are you're losing a little heat. So you can be a little more precise because you can more easily understand the reality than before because it was more complicated. So I like this idea to be a little more scientific, you know, in the way of
Yes.
explaining things. You know, not to say okay it's hot just to say it's hot. No, it's
That's
a
it.
you know it's not only that. For example, one short story I'm talking about in Switzerland. The temperature of the air was not so high, but the sun was high. The radiation of the sun was strong. So I lose conscious. I fall down
Mm-hmm.
because of the sun and not because of the temperature of the air. So it's some more precision, on that, and so
Yes.
I think it's quite interesting to do more rich the vocabulary of the
Yes.
writing and the atmosphere and atmospherical and climatic vocabulary.
Yeah, it's also has to do maybe with the infrastructure you were talking about. You are talking about the infrastructure of the atmosphere that is surrounding you.
Yes, exactly. It's less a psychological analysis of the surrounding things. It's more like a infrastructural material analysis. Yes, and this
Yes.
is very materialist in this way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So there's also a part of the book that it's called the end of Anthropocene. That it's not only your personal experience in terms of the other part of the book, meteorology, meteorología de los sentimientos and climática de las emociones, climatic of emotions. But in that part, at the end of Anthropocene, you relate your own experience with COVID. And I would love you to talk about this a little, in the sense of where was this impulse that made you, write down all this experience? From where it comes from?
In reality, it was a strange experience because it was at the end of the 2020. I have to go to
Yeah.
Taiwan because it was the opening of the big park. We have worked on this park during 9 years, so 8 years. So it was, it was very important for me, for my office. It was like the main project during many years. And so
Mm-hmm.
the big opening was in the calendar in December 2020, and
Mm-hmm.
so it was completely in the moment of the COVID, and so to go in Taiwan. And it was also the moment before the vaccine. It was the vaccine was not there,
Yes.
so I have to go to Taiwan and to stay in an hotel during 2 weeks, in quarantine before going out for the opening. So I have to arrive 2 weeks before, and
Mm-hmm.
during my stay in the hotel was very nice, and so it was very good. But during my stay, I became positive to COVID. And
Yeah.
so it means that I just get the COVID, the virus, the day before taking the airplane to Taiwan. And so,
Mm-hmm.
then I was, when I became positive, I was at the hospital, and so but they bring me in a kind of, they bring me in the hospital. Because
Mm-hmm.
at that moment, like 2 million of people was positive in France, but in Taiwan it was only 600, and they were only blocked and stopped at the border of the country. No, at that moment, no COVID was inside the island.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I have to stay in the hospital in a kind of secure room until I became negative again. So
Mm-hmm.
in a certain way, I was like thrown in jail, to not
Yes.
contaminate the Taiwanese people.
Anybody or
Yeah,
whatever. Yeah.
and so it was not really me that was thrown in jail. It was the virus, So this is what I
Yes.
say. It's like there is a death penalty for the virus. You have to die in this room of the hospital, and me, I was like attached to the virus. So I was not the main character of the story. You know, I was just something that was attached to the virus. So they cannot throw
Yes.
in jail only the virus. They have to throw me with the virus. So it's,
Yeah.
and then the virus has to die. And I have to wait, you know, until he die. And so at the
Until he
beginning, I
died.
was thinking it was only 1 week or 2 weeks, but after 3 weeks, he was still alive. And
He
then
was
I
still there.
stay, and then I never know when I will become negative again, and I cannot
Hmm.
go out of this room. So I was like during
Hmm.
1 month, more than 1 month, in one room. You know,
My God,
yeah,
more than 1 month. Oh
yes,
my God. Oh
and.
my God. So,
Yeah, so it was a
yeah.
quite strange story, but so the narrative about that is the name is the end of the Anthropocene, and it
Hmm.
was, you know, because I was thinking at that moment, you know, we are when we are, you know, a virus or I don't know another things that are not linked to humanity can completely like the sun in Albert Camus stories, you know. It can
Yeah.
completely transform the what's happened for the humanity, you know. And this is a
Yes.
little what happened with COVID-19. You know, it completely transformed the social interaction, the politic, and it was
Everything.
something that was not human. You know, so I think the idea of the Anthropocene is it's a kind of maybe of course there is the transformation of the planet linked to the human activities. So it's why we are talking about this geological new moment with the Anthropocene, because it came from the humanity that are polluting the ground and transforming the atmosphere. So it means that the planet is transformed not by non-human things or by some other change,
Other
but
kind
by
of
the
things.
humanity.
And
So,
yeah.
but in the same, so I'm completely agree with that. But in the same time, I think for some people, you know, the idea of the Anthropocene become like an extension of the politics into the infrastructure. You
Yeah.
know, it was like a madly anthropocentric point of view on the world. So it means, okay, now in the Anthropocene, you have to integrate also the animals into the politics. You know, you have to
Yes.
integrate. You have to integrate the stone into the politic, and so it was very popular in France. You know, this extension of the politic to the non-human. And so, but
Hmm.
the politic, you know, when you think about what is politic is the management of the police, you know, of the city.
Yeah.
So the politic,
Yeah.
it's a Greek word to link. There is a police, but the police is the human city. But outside
Hmm.
the human city, there is a physis. It became in the Roman language, it became the nature, but the
Hmm.
physis is like the non-human part of the world. And so with the COVID-19, you can understand, okay, in reality, it's not the politics that are integrating the animals and the stone, it's more the physis that are integrating the human into the physitic. You know, it's no more the
Yes.
politics, it's the physics, you know. And the COVID-19 was a little like a physitic moment, you know, where where you know what's happened was no more linked to humanity. It was like a virus. So it's why
Hmm.
at the end I say, okay, it's like the Covidocene. It's no more the Anthropocene, no more the Anthropocene. It's more the Covidocene. You know, that at one moment takes the power and so this kind of statement is something that is important in my architectural work. You know, by saying that yes, we are not the only designer. The human, you know, we are also integrating the rain,
Yeah.
the gravity, and the climate,
Yeah.
and yeah.
That's really interesting because maybe we have take the world and architecture and everything for granted. I mean, what I mean is that we are super we were in our comfort zone, always working and living and everything. And suddenly something that is not human just impacts in our lives. And, but they are there, they are out there. I mean, I mean, viruses and everything, this kind of, non-human species that we are living with them, even though we can see them or we cannot interact with them. They are going to interact with us in the sense, and that's really interesting. Where you're talking about when you were describing your own experience with the virus, you were the virus environment. I mean, you know, and that environment had to kill the virus so you can survive. As environment can survive. It's a kind of a really good picture. Indeed, I want to ask you a question that one of the viewers were asking, because I think this can be another subject that we can talk about. I think his name is Federico Litvin, I think. I'm going to translate it right now because I didn't have time, of course. So, how do you think that architecture can get rid of its own relate? I mean, its own story, and gets into a real tool that push in the inside of the people to which are inhabiting things. How can architecture can be that kind of tool that change people always and to affect people? What do you think about that, Philippe? Because I was going to ask you a similar question, but I prefer to read this one.
No, you know, when we have represent. So maybe first I think it's the architecture is of course transforming the people, because the reason of architecture is to create a microclimate for the animal body of, you know, because our temperature is 37 degrees Celsius and we have to keep always is 37 degrees Celsius. So it's why architecture is here. This is what you can read in the Vitruvius treatise. You know, he just say we have to, architecture is the art of transforming the climate to become inhabitable for the people, for the human. And so the reason why we are building is to have to block the sun ray, or to block the rain, or to block the cold wind, or to block the cold air. And by creating a bubble around us, you know, we can transform the temperature. So this is a reason why we have architecture, because we, for example, you cannot survive in Switzerland during the winter in the snow. You need architecture to protect the body too. And so it means that there is a physiological reason of architecture, and so it's mean the architecture, the art of transforming the condition surrounding the body for surviving. You know, this is and then so it's so I think we forget a little that, you know, because Aldo Rossi, for example, was only talking about the cultural aspect of architecture, never about the physiological aspect, you know. So and why he can do that? Because he was using so much fossil energy, you know. So you know, he don't care about fossil about oil, burning oil and things like that. So he was using too much oil, and by using too much oil, he can talk only about symbolism but he forget that, you know, that the climatic issue was the physiological issue was the beginning of the architecture, and this is, for example, in Natural History of Architecture, I'm talking about the Villa Rotonda of Palladio. You know, it's like a climatic machine, you know, because there is the dome that is with a hole that let the hot air escaping from the building, so you can cool the space, and then he align all the window and the door to get some wind through the house, and then he built a south room for the winter and the north room for the summer. So everything is based on climatic issue, but for Aldo Rossi and for this generation, it was only about composition, about aesthetic, so they forget the relationship, the material relationship between architecture and the human. You know, they were only talking about the cultural relationship, and so I think the material relationship is a fundamental one, and this is why today, also in Spain, you know, with the approach of the thermodynamic approach of architecture that you have, and that is becoming also very popular now with some very good office in Spain.
Yes, it is.
So it's really coming back to this fundamental approach, and to forget, to put more in the background this cultural, you know, this and then it's a rediscovery of the culture, because we understand that the culture is also coming from the infrastructure. This is a very Karl Marx point of view. You know, the aesthetic and the politic is coming from the infrastructure, and it's not something autonomous. You know, it's depending of the infrastructure. So
So, and what do you think after this this pandemic situation? Well, after, I mean, we are still in a pandemic situation, but what do you think are going to be the changes in a long term? I mean, in the term, in the field of architecture, and also this kind of how can we design and make this architecture to answer this situation and the new needs?
I think in the history you can find some example. You know, when you have a pandemic, of course it changed everything. But after, when you discover the antibiotic or the vaccine, so you forget. You know, in one year you can forget everything. So you know, and so this is what happened. You know, you know, for example, you know, when there is a Black Plague in the 14th century, you know, it's killed half of the population in Europe, and then, but after that, you know, okay, it was, so maybe it help us to understand the material reality behind architecture, but maybe more the most important thing is more the global warming, you know, the climate change, because it will not stop now. You know, it's becoming worse. You know, and so what's happened with global warming is that we are understanding that architecture, you know, is very materialist art. You know, it's not only to talk about the history of the culture of the architecture. It's really to help the human body to survive in heat waves, or it's really and because 39% of the CO2 emission are coming from the building. So it's also where we have to decrease completely the emission of the CO2. So there is like three challenges with architecture. It's first a climatic challenge, because you know, we are doing architecture for climatic reason, to cool the body when it's too hot, or to warm the body when it's too cold. And then, because it's linked to CO2 emission, we have to decrease. We have to manage, you know, the climatic issue of the building, and also the carbon footprint of the material, and all these type of things. So it's completely transforming the way of designing architecture, and so this is what is completely transforming since maybe like now. Since 3 years, we can say everybody are aware about that. Maybe before it was like more like confident part of the architecture. Maybe for some architects, they were still thinking that climatic issue was something out of the discipline. It was not.
Yes.
It was something like, okay, we don't have to talk about that. It is like, it's not architecture. It's because
it's not our problem.
Yes,
it's not our problem.
exactly. And it's strange because I try to understand from, this the idea of the autonomy. Maybe you heard about autonomy of architecture. It's an idea that was an idea that came from Aldo Rossi and Benevolo and this generation, and it came from Claude Lévi-Strauss, from the structuralism. And the French structuralism, in reality, is to talk about the superstructure. And but when Claude Lévi-Strauss invented the structuralism, that there is the autonomy of the language, the autonomy of discipline. It's a structuralist invention. So it came from the 1960s. It was not before. Before when Palladio was designing a house, it was for climatic reason. It was not for autonomy of the language of the superstructure of the architecture. So by understanding that, you also understand that by reading Claude Lévi-Strauss was still thinking like Karl Marx, that the infrastructure, the climatic issue, the energy, the health, the material, it was still, the main force of the society, but he was trying to understand what's happened in the superstructure. So it's why he was staying in the superstructure and trying to understand what is linked with the analogy, with the symbolism, all the things that happen there. And this is the aesthetic, the politics, the moral, and so. But he always say that the infrastructure was a dominant thing. But okay, and so the generation after him forget that the material infrastructure that was the dominant force. They were only talking about what's happened in the superstructure, and so this is why. For the architect of the postmodern generation, and also the late the son of this generation, they were disqualifying the technology, disqualifying the material, the climatic issue, because it was not into this autonomy of the superstructure, but they didn't understand. They were not very informed about the history, because they didn't understand that it was a pure invention of the 60s, and so what's happened now? It's I think the pandemic and the global warming is destroying this superstructure, the structuralism thinking that was like the late superstructuralists, and so. We are maybe coming back to a kind of Marxist point of view, to understand that the history is made by the infrastructure. So if you have a lot of energy, you are doing democratic society. If you have less energy, you are doing more slavery. If this is what Karl Marx explained. That the conditions, the superstructure is depending of the infrastructure, and then. It's very clear for architecture. Now, today, for example, everybody like stone, wood, hail, straw, this kind of earth, this kind
traditional material.
Exactly. And why? And nobody love any more concrete, aluminium, plastic. So it changed in 4 years. So all the aesthetic criteria change. And this is, if you think about that from a Karl Marx point of view, it's very clear, because the CO2, the infrastructure is completely changing. You can no more use so much energy. You cannot emit so much CO2 for producing the material. So, of course, the concrete produces a lot of CO2, because the cement, the transformation of the limestone into cement is emitting a lot of CO2. So you don't have to use any more concrete because of that. And so the aesthetic, the beauty is completely transforming by the CO2 criteria. So it means now we think wood is beautiful and concrete is awful, you know. So this is like this is a transformation of the superstructure of the
the
beauty.
paradigm,
Yes,
even the paradigm of beauty and the aesthetics
exactly.
of architecture and designing. Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah. And this
I
is
would
not
be
our
out.
decision.
Yeah.
This is not our decision. This is not the designer
Yes.
decision. It's not. It's not. Um, not someone that I say that you know. It's not like before. You know, during the period of the star architect. You know, full of oil. You know, like Rahm can say, okay, I like aluminium, and so aluminium because of fashion material. But today, you know, because we cannot, it was a period full of oil and full of fossil energy, and so. But today, okay, you cannot decide as a designer, okay, aluminium is beautiful. No, we say no. You understand there is too much CO2 footprint. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we can talk about a change of a paradigm in terms of from beauty to responsibility, for example, or we can change
Yeah.
that kind
But I
of
think
thing.
the beauty, you can say, you know, this is also a
Aesthetic,
change
sorry,
of
sorry,
beauty.
it's not, sorry, it's not beauty. Maybe it's aesthetic in the sense of how is going this
Mhm.
material working with my design instead
Yes.
of what I want
No,
to
I
tell
agree with
with
you.
my
The
design.
responsibility, of
Hmm.
course, the responsibility of
Yes.
the type of material you are using from a carbon
Hmm.
footprint, for example, is transforming the criteria. And but I think it's also transforming the notion of beauty. You know, the
Yes,
beauty,
that's
what we
true.
like. You know, the beauty of 5 years ago is no more the same than today. Yes.
Yeah, that's that's
Mm.
that's really really interesting. I would be hours talking with you, Philip, because it's so interesting. Maybe we have to do another session with this book because I have so many questions left, but we have just 5 minutes
Okay.
left.
Good.
So I just want to ask you the last question, because you as a teacher, as a professor, as a person related into university and into the new generations, what do you think we can expect from them? Can we have hope in this kind of new paradigms to get involved in the society and to because it's in their hands now, in
Mm.
our hands because we are the present generation, of course,
Mm.
but in their hands because they have to uh, follow the
Mhm.
world and to continue with the work and we continue with can we have hope? Are we
Yeah,
optimistic or not?
I think, you know, there is all this Greta Thunberg generation, so with
Yes.
the riot and the manifestation in the street,
Yeah.
and so and also, you know, when I very often I'm when you know when I'm doing some lecture, you know, for example, like last month I was in Lyon in France for, and so
Mhm.
some students they were talking to me and they said that they want to learn more about ecology and about climatic issue in architecture,
Mhm.
but the knowledge was not completely there, you know, also from the teacher, because if you think about the teacher that are talking about symbolism and autonomy, you know, it's quite strange, you know, because
Mhm.
uh,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
so so it means that it's true that the change and the type of teaching method have to change urgently. We
Yeah.
can say.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's one of the most, I mean, urgent thing
Yes.
in the
Hmm.
sense of that we have to change. Maybe we have
Mm.
to change the way that we teach
Yeah.
architecture and this paradigm,
Yeah.
so we can change the design and the world in the
Yeah.
terms now in the term that's huge term. The world is a huge term,
Hmm.
but I think I do agree with you, Philip. It has been a pleasure to have you
Thank
here
you.
today. Thank you so much for sharing this hour with us and this with this generosity and this. I've loved this conversation so much, and of course, I'm going to say this in English, and then I'm going to say that in Spanish. But the book is available in our website, also in any bookshop that you are that is nearby your neighborhood or whatever, you can ask for it. Even if you are not from Spain, you can ask for it in our website and also in your bookshop. It is going to get there. I'm going to say that in Spanish. Philippe, just one sec, I'm so sorry. El libro, como siempre os digo, está disponible en nuestra tienda online, en librerías, por supuesto. Por favor, id a verlas, ayudarlas, porque son nuestras amigas, nuestras cómplices totalmente necesarias. We are running out of time right now. We have just 1 minute left. Thank you again, Philippe, for everything. Thank you for being here today. And I've almost forget. We are be very, very. I don't know how to say that in English. Be very. Ay, my God. Atentos, estar atentos. I'm sorry. I don't know how to say that in English right now. On Friday, because we are doing an extra club, an extra session. We are going to make a guide visit to a current exhibition here from about Arne Jacobsen here in the Colegio de Arquitectos de Madrid. So please don't miss it. We are going to, I'm going to say that in Spanish too. I'm sorry, Philippe. El viernes estad muy atentos porque vamos a estar a las 12 en punto en el Colegio de Arquitectos de Madrid haciendo una visita guiada a la exposición que se cierra de Arne Jacobsen. Así que nada, os veo aquí el viernes a las 12, no os lo perdáis. Philippe, thank you so much for everything. Maybe I think we have to talk about maybe another session for this book and all these subjects.
The next one.
The next one, yeah, that's a spoiler. Yeah. That's right now we have a spoiler here, but of course we are going to do another club, another session for another project that we are working in. Okay. So thank you very much. Please take care.
Thank you, Maria.
And please, if you are coming here in Madrid anytime, please just call and let's meet in person because we haven't met in person yet. So please call.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
everybody. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.